Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 703 for the 27th of March, 2022. I know sometimes I say 2021. You know how it is. Maybe you're like me. It's Richard Saunders here, by the way. You could be like me. Sometimes, especially in the first part of any given year, you keep saying it's the last year. I remember when the years ticked over to from 1999 to the year 2000. For some years after that, I would catch myself starting to write the date or the year with 19, as if it was still 19-something or other. Maybe you're like me. What am I doing? Oh, yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast episode. I've said all that. It's a rainy day here in Sydney again. Can you believe it again? What's coming up on this week's show? What's coming up? We're going to start with a story, sort of a catch-up story. Some weeks ago, I talked about Facebook running, well, in my opinion, very unwise advertising for dodgy products, devices that can't possibly work, services like psychic services, which in our opinion certainly don't work. And in the last week or so, Facebook, Meta being the parent company, of course, have found themselves being sued by the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission here in Australia for false advertising for cryptocurrency or crypto schemes a couple of years back. So we covered this story and posed the question, well, if Facebook can get sued, or Meta, might be more precise, can get sued or have action taken against it for this sort of advertising, then why not for other dodgy products? Following that, it's the Australian Skeptics newsletter, read once again with elegance and poise by Adrian Hill from Canada. What's coming up? What's the news? What's happening with Australian Skeptics, compiled by Tim Mendham. And then Tim joins us for the Book of Tim. And this week, a very interesting first part of a two-parter. Tim looks at the history of the word quack and quackery and medicine in ancient civilizations. This week, starting with the practices of ancient Greece. And this is a story written by Tim Harding. Then to round off the show, it's back to the Trove Archives. And an interesting Trove Archives this week. I hope they're always interesting. We're going to look at, amongst other things, a book review from 1975, a book called Superminds, where the author was of the opinion that any day now, psychic skills and feats and things would be a reality. And children would be bending spoons in the future. Let's see, 1975. So the future in 1975 would be the 80s, the 90s, something like that, which is now way in our past. A big shout out to my friends in Victoria, and thank you to Michelle Bickersma and co for arranging for me last week to speak at the Vic Skeptics Cafe. I gave a talk about the Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project. It was a good turnout. And it was so much fun to see all my old friends in Victoria who I haven't seen for a long time, and to have a chat, take questions about my talk and then just have an informal catch-up. So thank you, all concerned. It was really great. But now it's time for me to run downstairs and try a nice hot buttered crumpet. Crumpets. Do you have crumpets where you are? Childhood favourite of mine. I remember my grandma used to make hot, buttery crumpets. Good times. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Here's an interesting story to be sure, concerning Meta, Facebook. And it is being sued here in Australia by the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. And I pick up the story. It's been widely reported, but we'll just pick one at random here. Bloomberg, Bloomberg.com. Meta sued by Australian watchdog over scam crypto advertisements. And this is by Angus Whitley, published on the 18th of March. Facebook owner Meta Platforms Inc. is being sued by Australia's competition watchdog, which alleges the social media giant misled users by publishing scam advertisements featuring unwitting local celebrities. The ads promoted cryptocurrency investments and linked to fake media articles that endorsed the schemes, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission said Friday. Facebook users probably believed the promotions were associated with the famous people in the ads, who included businessman Dick Smith, who incidentally is a founder and patron of Australian Skeptics, and television presenter David Koch, even though they had never approved them, the watchdog said. Meta, which also owns Instagram, quote, engaged in false, misleading or deceptive conduct, end quote, the ACCC said. The firm's technology enabled these ads to be targeted at the most susceptible users, the watchdog said. One individual lost more than $650,000 Australian dollars, according to the statement. Quote, the essence of our case is that Meta is responsible for these ads that it publishes on its platform, end quote, ACCC Chair Rod Sims said, quote, it is alleged that Meta was aware that the celebrity endorsement cryptocurrency scam ads were being displayed on Facebook, but did not take sufficient steps to address the issue, end quote. And another quote here, quote, we don't want ads seeking to scam people out of their money or mislead people on Facebook. They violate our policies and are not good for our community, end quote. A Sydney-based spokeswoman for Meta said in a statement, quote, we will review the recent filing by the ACCC and intend to defend the proceedings, end quote. And I well remember seeing these fake ads 2 years ago, something like that, and remarking at the time, or at least remembering that one of them included Dick Smith, which was, of course, nonsense. Dick Smith would not endorse such a product. Now, listeners might remember that on the Skeptic Zone episode 693, on the 16th of January, I ran a story, and it's entitled Facebook and Foot Pads, where I said, I look at some of the ridiculous advertisements that appear on Facebook news feeds, from foot patches to psychic fairs and even astral projection. Just what nonsense is being pushed out to thousands of Facebook users, and I covered some of the, in my opinion, at least questionable advertising appearing on Facebook at the time. So it's worth another look at the moment. And as I scroll down my Facebook, almost immediately I have something called Crystal Clear Psychics. We are recruiting. All applicants will be fully tested. So must be experienced, genuine, and highly gifted. Well, I could save them a bit of time. I could test them if they want. We are recruiting psychics, clairvoyants, mediums, and tarot card readers to join us at Crystal Clear Psychics. Apply now. Questionable, to say the least. Now, we also have something like this, which you may consider is just religious, instead of making a medical claim, but I would say it was making a medical claim. It says here, Buddha stones, free today only. Once considered more precious than gold, white jade is a royal crystal, whatever that means, used for millennia to treat ailments of the mind, body, and spirit. And to me, that's a medical claim. If you're treating ailments of the body, let alone not worrying about the mind and the spirit. It is also often used for chakra healing, particularly the heart and the crown chakras. Well, that's good to know. Here's the next one. If I scroll down a little bit, it says the NLP Toolkit, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is widely regarded as a pseudoscience. Want to become a master communicator and influence how others feel, behave, and react? If one simple free guide could help you influence others in every situation so you can, that sentence doesn't make sense, never mind, frame your communication with others to your advantage, get more yes from others and agree with your ideas, make people more responsive to your way of thinking, would this interest you? Now, one of the things that always worried me about these methods and so on that say that win friends and influence people or make people come around to your point of view or whatever it is, what if your point of view is rubbish? What if you're wrong from the beginning? I think I prefer critical thinking, because as much as it's tempting to think I could have some sort of magical system to make people see my point of view, it's something they really have to come to themselves. I'm sure every cult leader in the world would love to have a magical system to make people come around to their way of thinking. And another one coming up here, what's this? Spooky 2 Scalar. Spooky 2 Scalar energy, as the most advanced and effective energy healing methods, is known for its healing properties. It can be applied to reduce and possibly eliminate many forms of diseases. Discover why over 10,000 backers worldwide love Spooky 2 Scalar. And there's a picture of Nikola Tesla. Scalar energy will be the wave of the future medicine, it says, with a box, 2 boxes of some device or other. And a quick click onto their page. Spooky 2 Scalar is the first scalar treatment device to provide 3 different methods of transmitting healing scalar waves: pure scalar, molecular scalar, and Rife scalar. Needless to say, this is considered to be complete pseudoscience. And, of course, we have the usual lineup of people offering psychic services. Psychic medium Donna Young, also available on Zoom. 30-minute readings, psychic medium Donna Young. Accurate predictions. Really, she should have a read of the Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project. Book now, $60. Psychic medium Michelle Bagnall. Book a reading, Michelle's services. Psychic medium readings receive messages of guidance, clarity, and comfort from your passed over loved ones or guides. Pendulum readings. Michelle's pendulum is very accurate. Receive the divine answers to 5 closed questions with a pendulum reading. Well, make of that what you will. Now, what I'm not seeing now, but I do see frequently, are ads with people claiming that they can remove your curse or black magic. And this is an old scam here in Australia, and I'm sure in other parts of the world. And there is a percentage of the population who are vulnerable, who really do believe that their misfortune or what have you is the result of some sort of curse or black magic. And indeed, there have been scams in the past where the scammers get the victims to bring in cash, thousands of dollars in cash, to cleanse the cash of the evil forces. And of course, the cash is very cleansed because the poor victim never sees it again. But to get back to my original point, Meta are in trouble for letting the scam ads appear on their platform. But I think they should take a good hard look at all the other, to be polite and diplomatic, questionable advertising that is found on Facebook. I'll link to the original article from Bloomberg in this week's show notes.
Hi there, I'm Abhijit and I host the Rationable podcast on BeRationable.com. Every couple of weeks, I science the hell out of alternative medicines, health and nutrition fads, social media forwards, science news, and lots more. Of course, you can find all of my articles, podcast episodes, and lots more on www.berationable.com. See you there, and until then, always be rationable.
Hello everyone, it's Adrienne Hill from Canada, here to read the highlights from the Australian Skeptics newsletter. This is newsletter number 144. You can subscribe to this newsletter and get it delivered to your inbox every other week, complete with links to all the stories. Just visit www.skeptics.com.au. But now, let's get to the newsletter and see what Tim Mendham has lined up for us. Hi all, says Tim. Is the Therapeutics Good Administration getting more active in calling alt-med providers into line over false or unfounded claims? 2 companies fined in the last couple of weeks seems to be a higher rate than normal, albeit nowhere near enough to cover the plethora of complaints made over the months and years. Nonetheless, we continue elsewhere with seers, psychics, UFOs, ghosts, and the more positive aspects of helping people learn. Read on, Tim. Okay, Tim, we will do just that. Guilty plea on illegal health claims. Gold Coast company FuturePro has pleaded guilty to 7 breaches of the Therapeutic Goods Act 1989 for the unlawful import, export, manufacture, supply, and advertising of herbal medicines. Bloodroot and Gumby. As an aside, I have to say, I have learned so much from reading this newsletter. At first, I thought there were 2 green bendy toys ground up into herbal medicine, but now I know that there is a small shrub or tree that is found in Australia that is called Gumby. It is green. I wonder how bendy it is. Now back to the herbal medicine. They made claims about the bloodroot and Gumby relating to the prevention and treatment of illnesses, including various types of cancers. The director of the company also pleaded guilty to a further 7 criminal charges, with a sentencing hearing set for the 28th of April 2022 at Southport Courthouse in Queensland. Homeopathy research seriously sucks. Research on homeopathy is often biased to make it look more effective than it really is, according to a new study published in the British Medical Journal. Homeopathy researchers routinely neglect to register the details of their clinical trials before they publish their results, and unregistered trials usually provide rosier results than registered ones, the study found. Note, the link in the headline is to an article in Gizmodo. Getting a copy of the study from the British Medical Journal is a bit more difficult. UFO Photoblog. For those interested in serious investigation in UFOs or UAPs, you might like to take a look at Photocat, that's spelled Fotocat. Since 2000, this has been a project owned and managed by Vicente Juan Ballester Olmos, with the purpose of creating a catalog of all worldwide UFO photo events. It is a very skeptical site with in-depth assessments of claims both recent and historical. Brian Cox says he doesn't believe in aliens. Physicist, TV personality, and one-time pop star Brian Cox said it is unlikely that aliens exist because the chances of sophisticated life evolving like humans are simply too low. The concept of, "Are we alone?" is looked at in an article in the March 2022 issue of The Skeptic. Fake Psychic. It's a 6-part series of podcasts from BBC Sounds on, quote, the stranger-than-fiction story of Lamar Keane, a renowned psychic who confessed to being part of an underground network he called the Psychic Mafia, end quote. Did Bulgarian seer predict Putin's victory in Ukraine? It's big news everywhere, as you would expect when, quote, Putin will become the Lord of the world, while Europe will become a wasteland, end quote. Except that neither the blind seer Baba Vanga nor her Russian interpreter Valentin Sidorov actually said it. But what they really said is a more interesting story. YouTube of note. Vulture Watch, a new YouTube channel of skeptical videos, takes a look at the Healy treatments as featured in the last newsletter when the TGA issued a $26,000 fine. Vulture Watch is about, quote, creating awareness of exploitation, irrationality, discrimination, or misinformation, end quote. It delves into the motives of such vulturous activities and looks at how it can hold such behavior accountable, and so far has looked at homeopathy, anti-vaxxers, and the Healy product. And he's only just beginning. Well worth a watch. An interview with Mr. Vulture can be heard on the last episode of the Skeptic Zone, episode 702. The March 2022 issue of The Skeptic is out, and it features a look at the tics and tactics of high-level athletes to improve their performance. A combination of superstition and pseudoscience that is nonetheless very influential on fans and would-be champions. The issue also features articles on what exactly is Agenda 21, what do your own research entails, how a well-known critic of parapsychology had a change of heart, well, sort of, and much more. So if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to do so. Resource problem means ghosts becoming dormant. Dr. Paul Lee, a top paranormal expert, no one ever quotes a minor paranormal expert, says that ghosts have become dormant in the UK's top demon hotspots, and they are now very inactive. Quote, "It could be that a spirit had a natural source of energy to begin with, which has dwindled away over time, leaving them without the reserves to manifest anymore," end quote, the expert says. But don't fear, ghosts can recharge themselves. They just have to find the right shaped plug. A job for a top paranormal expert. Oh, God. Meteorite will end life on Earth on May 6, apparently. A Mexican astrologer, Padme Vedante, predicts we have less than 2 more months before the big kaboom. So don't bother packing your bags, as there won't be any place to go. Unfortunately for Vedante, according to asteroid tracking service space reference NASA, being the spoilsports they are saying the body in question will pass within 10,275,352 kilometers of Earth in 2092, and is classified as, quote, "not a potentially hazardous object," end quote. There is more to read in the newsletter when you sign up, but for now, this is Adrienne Hill signing off from the land of milk, maple, and melting snow, Canada. See you later.
Hello, this is Maynard. Did you know that you can listen to the Skeptic Zone on YouTube? Yes, I know, sounds crazy, but it's true. Also, you can hear 40 logical fallacies with Michelle Bickersma and funny sketches with Richard Saunders and a host of other skeptics. Just click on the YouTube links on the homepage at skepticzone.tv.
And now, a reading from the Book of Tim with Tim Mendham. And just before we get into the Book of Tim this week, hello Tim, it's Tim here at the Skeptic Zone studios to record. We're going to be, he's going to be looking at something called The Call of the Quack. But Tim, before you start to read, and over the months and the years you've been reading excerpts from the magazine, what are you looking for when you're looking for contributions, maybe from our listeners who want to write for The Skeptic?
Always welcome. Always look forward to contributions, Richard. It's the lifeblood of a magazine, actually.
It is,
especially original articles or letters or opinion pieces or leads even, just on stories that are worthwhile. Always happy to consider them. And what is the best thing to do is to email me with an idea, right, about what you would like to write about or what you think should be covered, and then we can discuss it. And then, if you want, you can write about it, and we can sort of give you the right tone to write an article in, which is not too heavy scientific, because we're not a little peer-reviewed journal, right? But something which is of interest to the readers, and the readers have a wide range of interests themselves. And then we can work out and sort of process how an article or an opinion piece might work. It's best to email me first, because we do get the situation, especially with book reviews, When someone writes a book review and say, hey, you should publish this, and we have to say, yeah, we did the last issue. So sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry to waste your effort and time in doing it, but it's best. That's why it's best to see if it's something that's been covered before.
Yeah.
But welcome it very much. They can write to me at editor@skeptics.com.au. And very keen to hear what people might say.
Yeah, and some of our listeners have done that already over the while, and they've ended up in print with reports published.
In print, and they've become famous.
And what a notable case in point would be our reporter Adrian Hill,
Absolutely.
who started as a listener to the Skeptic Zone and eventually ended up being published in the magazine.
Yeah, we've published articles and things by a number of the reporters on the Skeptic Zone. Mandy.
Yes.
We've published things by Trishan. We've published things by, of course, Maynard.
Maynard, of course, over the years,
Occasionally from, what's the guy's name? Richard Sundry. Richard Sundry.
Sundry. Yes, that's him.
Published things by him too occasionally.
Sometimes.
He's a bit annoying, but we like to keep him happy.
Anyway, folks, there's the clue. If you think you have an idea to be considered, contact Tim, send him, pitch your idea. You might have a book review indeed, or you might have a report or a story about some paranormal or pseudoscientific thing of an interest to you, and you never know, you might end up in print. But now...
And then you might end up back on the Skeptic Zone.
And you might end up back on the Skeptic Zone, which will please me. It's a cycle of life, Tim. It all comes around.
What comes around
comes around. But now I'll give it back to you, and we can take up this week's episode of the Book of Tim.
Hi, my name's Tim Mendham. I'm the Executive Officer of Australian Skeptics Inc. and editor of our journal, The Skeptic, which you can download for free, most of the issues, from our website, skeptics.com.au. And today I'll do the first part of a two-part story called The Call of the Quack, which is by one of our regular correspondents, Tim Harding, who looks at the origin of Western quackery, including the word itself, and the worker. So if you're interested in quacks and quackery, this is the place to start. As the Australian comedian and musician Tim Minchin once said, by definition, alternative medicine has either not been proved to work or has been proved not to work. You know what they call alternative medicine that has been proved to work? They call it medicine. A corollary of Minchin's theoretical question might be, what should we call alternative medicine that has been proved not to work? I recently asked this question at my local Skeptics in the Pub meeting, eliciting an immediate and resounding chorus of quackery. On his Quackwatch website, Dr. Stephen Barrett defines quackery as the promotion of unsubstantiated methods that lack a scientifically plausible rationale. This definition includes questionable ideas as well as questionable products and services, regardless of the sincerity of their promoters. In line with this definition, Barrett reserves the word fraud only for situations in which deliberate deception is involved. So where did quackery come from? The word quack derives from the archaic word quacksalver, of Dutch origin, literally meaning hawker of salve, S-A-L-V-E. The quacksalvers sold their wares on the market by shouting in a loud voice. In the Middle Ages, the word quack meant shouting. These days, we tend to associate quackery with dodgy products and practices from the 19th century, such as snake oil, miracle hair tonics, magnetic bracelets, and homeopathic remedies. But the origins of Western quackery actually go back much further, to the cradle of Western civilization in ancient Greece and Rome. In these ancient times, scientific experimental methods had not yet been developed, let alone clinical trials. Medical observations were largely confined to patients as individuals rather than as a cohort or group. Ancient physicians were not much better than naturopaths when it came to empirical evidence. Without scientific data from treatment groups versus control groups, it was difficult to know which treatments worked and which didn't. As a result, there was no clear dividing line between medicine and quackery. Ancient medicine, in quotes, consisted of a mishmash of well-meaning but misguided treatments by physicians and surgeons, faith healers, herbal remedies, aromatherapy, other superstitions, and even sorcery or magic. Sound familiar? That's right. Many of these weird ancient beliefs have carried through to the quackery of today as a legacy of the vast Roman Empire. But let's look at the ancient Greek medicine. The first notable Greek physician may have been the poet Homer in the 17th or 8th century BCE. In his Iliad, Homer describes various medical techniques such as the extraction of arrows, the treatment of wounds, the application of dressings, and the dispensing of soothing drugs. The Homeric poems provide a glimpse of ancient medical ideas and practices long before the formal documentation of medical literature. It is significant that practical medical treatment appears to have been provided in this early period, probably as a matter of military necessity, so that wounded soldiers could be saved to fight another day. Reliance on the gods or faith healing seems to have come later, to some extent in parallel with advances in medical treatment. The god of healing, Asclepius, had a shrine at Epidaurus in southern Greece, where miraculous recoveries were said to have been made by the sick and lame by sleeping in the temple overnight. A Greek lyric poet from Thebes named Pindar, 522 to 443 BC, wrote, Asclepius delivered all of them from their different pains, tending some of them with gentle incantations, others with soothing potions, or by wrapping remedies all around their limbs, and others he set right with surgery. There are also apothecaries who harvested herbs and prepared drugs, accompanying their ministrations with important rituals and incantations. Theophrastus, 371 to 287 BCE, who was a student of Aristotle, describes some of these weird rituals in his History of Plants. And the quote from that, they say that the peony, which some call glycoside, should be dug up at night, for if a man does it in the daytime and is observed by a woodpecker while he is gathering the fruit, he risks the loss of his eyesight. And if he is cutting the root at the time, he gets a prolapsed anus. And it continues, one should draw 3 circles around mandrake with a sword and cut it with one's face to the west. And at the cutting of the second piece, one should dance around the plant and say as many things as possible about the mysteries of love. I know, sound like doctors today, doesn't it? They do much the same thing. On the other hand, the medical literature subsequently found in Greece differed markedly from that found elsewhere. It included reasoned arguments and debates reflecting an intellectual openness consistent with Greek philosophy, rather than medicine as some sort of secret mystical art. The links between medicine and philosophy can be traced back to Parmenides, Empedocles, and even Pythagoras, whose ideas on appropriate living, including a ban on eating beans. Fair enough. Athens was one of the first city-states to employ a publicly funded physician as a more rational alternative to traditional folk medicine. Other Greek cities also maintained a public physician as well as several private practitioners. The Greek historian Herodotus tells the tale of the early Greek physician Democedes of Croton, who started his career in the civil service of Athens and Aegina. In 522 BCE, Democedes was captured by the Persians and sent to Susa. The Persian king Darius once sprained his ankle while he was hunting, and his Egyptian doctors seemed to make it worse. Darius then summoned Democedes, who was able to heal the ankle using Greek remedies. Democedes was richly rewarded and hired as a physician of the Persian court. Darius' wife, Atossa, later had a breast ulcer. When Democedes cured her ulcer, he was allowed to visit Greece as a reward. Schools of medicine had existed for some time in various regions of Greece, most notably on the island of Kos, associated with the famous name of Hippocrates, a younger contemporary of Herodotus. Hippocrates' contribution to medicine is best remembered today by the ethical oath bearing his name, the Hippocratic Oath. Very little is known of Hippocrates himself or how much of the Hippocrates medical treatises he personally wrote. Hippocrates is cited in later works by Aristotle and Plato, but the Greek habit of composing imaginary speeches or letters by famous people from the past gradually blurred the distinction between the genuine and the false. In the following, references to Hippocrates are actually references to the large body of medical literature bearing his name, the Hippocratic corpus. Hippocrates attempted to put medical diagnosis and treatment on a rational basis. He viewed the human body as an organism whose parts must be understood as a whole. Hippocrates thought that human physiology comprised 4 fluids, or humours: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, corresponding to the 4 inanimate elements of earth, air, fire, and water. Disease was thought to result from an imbalance of these humours, resulting in a disturbance of the natural harmony and order of the world, so important to classical Greek thought. Hippocrates also placed emphasis on prognosis as well as diagnosis, so that the course of an illness could be predicted. The more familiarity a physician showed with a disease, the more confidence his patients would have in him. Prognosis also had practical benefits in planning the medical interventions that would be needed at different times. In the absence of modern germ theory of infectious disease, the danger to health from overcrowding within the long walls of Athens was not foreseen, resulting in a devastating plague in 430 BC, as described by Thucydides in his book The Peloponnesian War. Thucydides did not attempt to explain the reasons for the plague, but in the prognostic tradition of Hippocrates, he tried to describe its symptoms and effects so that if it struck again, it could be recognised. Active medical intervention include cauterizations and bloodletting, as well as surgery, the rectification of dislocations, and the setting of bone fractures. Other therapies included cupping, still around, special diets, still around, herbal remedies, etc., potions, purgatives, and exercises, consistent with the idea of bringing the body back into balance, still around. One rather spectacular treatment often performed in public was succussion, where the patient would be tied upside down to a ladder and then repeatedly dropped from a height of several feet. And more concussion than succussion. It is unclear what succussion was supposed to achieve, but it is worth noting that succussion is a word still used by homeopaths to describe a shaking step in the preparation of their water doses. Samuel Hahnemann, the founder of homeopathy, believed that succussion activated the vital energy, in quotes, of the diluted substance and made it stronger. So what you're seeing in the Greek days is repeated even now in the modern age. So that's part 1 of this article on the Call of the Quack, which is from the Skeptic magazine, September 2013, volume 33, number 3. The next talk I'll be taking it up from the Roman point of view, so we look to the Greek and then we'll look at the Roman and see how they take the idea of quackery and how it eventually ends up with us.
The Skeptic, the journal from Australian Skeptics. Subscribe online to the world's second oldest skeptical magazine. Just visit www.skeptics.com.au and click the magazine link. There you will also find, free to download, almost 40 years of back issues. The Skeptic, the journal from Australian Skeptics, available as a physical copy or as a digital copy delivered to your inbox. Time once again to open up the digital pages. How do you open up a digital page? You click on it, I guess. You click on it and you discover you're in the Trove Archives at trove.nla.gov.au. For those of you who don't know, this is the online resource from the Australian Government and the National Library of Australia, which is just chock-a-block, full of digital archives, especially of newspapers and magazines. And the good thing is you can do your search, and as we've been doing now for many months, we do a search. And currently we're researching paranormal things like UFOs, ESP, paranormal in general, clairvoyance, that sort of thing. Now let's start with a short clipping here from the Sydney Morning Herald, way back in 1950, the 18th of November. UK town sees flying saucers. Real ones. Now it's interesting to note that, so this dates from 1950, the term flying saucer was not that old by 1950. From our staff correspondent, London, November 17. Cups, saucers, teapots and plates are jumping off the counter in an Ipswich, Suffolk cafe and whistling through the air, according to the Daily Herald today. The proprietor thinks a poltergeist, a mischievous ghost, is at work. He has asked for the help from the rector of Borley, Essex, who lives in Britain's most haunted rectory. 11 people say they have seen cups hurtle through the air and crash on the floor during the last few days. A policeman called to investigate. He was greeted by crashing cups. I've got a funny feeling I might have mentioned this story before because it's so short and so funny. Now, this promises to be an interesting one. Way back in 1975, on the 26th of September, from the Canberra Times. Books. So I guess it's a book review. Children of the Future Bend a Spoon. And it seems to be a review of the book Superminds, an inquiry into the paranormal by Professor John Taylor, published by Macmillan, 183 pages, $11.50. Reviewer, Baron Jan Tervile. During a BBC television show in November 1973, Professor Taylor sat behind Uri Geller when the latter demonstrated his powers. He knew that Geller claimed to be able to bend metal objects by sheer mental power, and as a specialist in molecular physics, he found that hard to believe. Witnessing Geller at work had an overwhelming effect on him. In front of his own eyes, metal objects developed soft regions, bent and sometimes broke under Geller's gentle strokes. Oh, dearie me. If I'd only been there at the time, I could have said, by the way, look at that. Anyway, Professor Taylor had already spent much of his life struggling to expand the traditional boundaries of physics, quite in line with his previous efforts to push research into the unknown. He took Geller's stage show as a challenge to science. His book is a result of his subsequent inquiries. It presents an effort to find a scientific explanation for metal bending and, by extension, for clairvoyance and telepathy. His first observation was most encouraging. Geller's strange powers appeared not to be unique. The telecast had sparked off a wave of home experiments, and several people, mainly women and children, found that they could do the same, distort metal objects without exerting the pressure that ordinarily would be needed to do so. Some claimed to be able to do it without actually touching the object at all. Wow, that's a big claim. In Britain alone, about a handful of, quote, superminds, end quote, of this sort were visited and subjected to some tests by the author. In the book, he describes how these tests helped him along in the investigation of this particular skill. Step by step, he eliminates some explanations which spring first to the fore: fraud, optical illusion, the use of chemicals, heat, or a source of radioactive power. Now, I'll just stop here to say that's a very interesting observation. It's a lot of red herrings. Of course, all these years later, we know it's a magic trick. It's sleight of hand. It's conjuring. But if you don't know how it works, then I guess you might want to try and eliminate all sorts of things. Radioactive power. We read on. He obtained little encouragement from his fellow scientists in this quest. In fact, most of his colleagues seem to have tried to keep him from making a fool of himself. Consequently, he had no generous research funds available to create the ideal testing situations, and much of the evidence of this book rests therefore upon data which the skeptics will dismiss straight away as unscientific and unreliable. However, the fact remains that if only a single case of strange metal bending phenomenon is proven genuine, Professor Taylor's quest is of immense importance. The author claims to have documented many such genuine instances of the phenomenon, and all who trust his veracity ought therefore to take note of his findings. If his observations are right, it may make the scientific study of parapsychology more widely accepted than it has been hitherto, given the author's history of rather unorthodox research. He must have relished in his findings. Having ruled out to his own satisfaction all possibilities of modern science to explain the phenomenon, he proceeds to widen the limitations of science in order to encompass metal bending. With alacrity, he shakes off the shackles of science, and his fertile brain comes up with new models in which to fit his particular gift. It is fascinating reading material even for the skeptically minded. However, Professor Taylor gives his opponents some formidable weapons. In the first place, he recounts a multitude of extraordinary events ascribed to Geller, which have little to do with the main object of the book. Thus, he reports that Geller can reputably be in more than one place, that he can move objects from one continent to another by sheer willpower, and he is in communication with outer space. Geller himself, in the midst of his stage career, is wise enough not to deny these rumors, but Professor Taylor's inclusion of such legends weakens his case. It makes him seem rather credulous and a little too willing to believe in the events which he proposes to scrutinize with scientific detachment. Another aspect of the book which probably will boost sales, but which detracts from the scientific approach, lies in some of the illustrations. A multitude of graphs, photographs, and plates are to the point, representing the particular humanly included metal fatigue and its related problems. However, scattered throughout the book are a series of illustrations which are definitely not referred to in the text, which clearly fall outside the scope of the book and even sometimes negate the author's statements. These are pictures reputedly showing ectoplasm emitting from people, illustrations which ought to be in a book on acupuncture, photographs of spirits of the dead, and an intriguing snapshot of a man who levitates. Many a scientist may suspect some to be nothing more than trick photographs. Such illustrations are rather irrelevant to the text, and the author himself states categorically that he does not believe a camera would be able to photograph a ghost, such images existing only in the mind of the beholder. Notwithstanding these shortcomings, the book is a captivating report of unusual observations and experiments, of temporary conclusions and tentative probes. At the very end of the volume, Taylor's expanded scientific model takes shape. Is it just feasible that certain people can control the emission of low-frequency energy, and that this energy, under certain circumstances, acts as a catalyst which releases the inner strain of objects? This type of emission would be virtually impossible to monitor with existing machinery, but Professor Taylor suggests that a human brain may just be able to do so. Thus, the author presents a scientific hypothesis which covers the phenomenon of metal bending, as well as telepathy and some forms of clairvoyance. He hopes that by inference it will shed light on the ancient skills of psychic healing, the laying on of hands, and some forms of mediumship. Testing whether he is on the right track will probably make for highly stimulating further research. I can't help remember something James Randi once said. When the US government spent millions of dollars on psychic research, he said he could have saved them all that money with a cheap phone call. So Professor Taylor, what was this book called again? Superminds, an inquiry into the paranormal. So there we go. Some interesting items here and there from the archives to do with the paranormal, ESP, and such like. And you too can discover what's waiting for you at Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, the online resource from the Australian Government and the National Library of Australia. Have a look, put in your search criteria, and you'll never know. You'll never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Coming up next week, part 2 of the book of Tim's current little series about quackery, where Tim looks at quackery in ancient Rome. And also I'm trying to line up Maynard to do an interview with a book author. Hopefully I can do that in the next week or two. Always hard to tell because you know what? We can't predict the future. Thank you to all my Patreons and PayPal subscribers, without whom there would be no show. And as I've said before, the microphone I'm speaking into, which is being fed into my Zoom H6 mixer, listening on my, I keep mentioning products here, it's the Shure microphone into my Zoom mixer to listen with my, what are these, my Sony headset. And sometimes I use my Rode other microphone. There we are, lots of sponsorship hopefuls there. No, they don't sponsor me, folks. This is what I use. This is what I use your money for. I buy equipment to hopefully produce a better show for you. But thank you to all those people who do chip in, and you can help support the Skeptic Zone financially by visiting skepticzone.tv. Actually, there's a wealth of information. Have a look. Have a look. Right at the top of the page, I have a handy link to the Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project, where you can have that read to you. If you scroll to the bottom of the page, let me do that right now. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Here we go. You can watch the Vaccination Chronicles documentary I did some years ago. You can listen to Solar Flare, The Band of Power, the radio play I wrote and produced some years ago. Join the cast of the Skeptic Zone podcast and a host of special guests in their first audio adventure as they board the Australian space ship Solar Flare to fight the forces of Wu throughout the galaxy. Also featuring the hit song Far by George Hrab. It's old-time radio from the future. So you can listen to that right off the page. Then you can download, if you keep going down, as Michelle Bickersma reminds us occasionally on the show with her little segment, little ad in Japanese, you can download free origami posters folded and photographed by myself. There's a selection there. Or if you scroll right to the bottom, you can click and go to the shop where you can download, for a reasonable fee, lots of other origami posters I've done. And that money, of course, is also another way you can help support the Skeptic Zone. And another little hint here about the page. If you go to the top of the page and click the episodes link, and then at the top of the next page, you'll be presented with a search box. So if you type in your search question, your search criteria there, you can find out in episodes past where I might have covered a certain topic or spoken about somebody. So that's very handy too. All that at skepticzone.tv. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.
Just a second. This is the Richard Saunders' Skeptic Zone. So he always does this dice game at the very end. It's like an Easter egg.
Have you ever been on a podcast before, Susan?
I've never, ever been on a podcast before. Today.
Not today.
You haven't been, not today?
All
Not
right.
today. Okay, here's the dice game. Okay.
Tomorrow he is.
Here we go. All right, so
So-
I had to put a lot of thought into this. Now, I was always 555, right?
And we
And
did
got
some
it.
weeks ago. We had 555. We really did.
So I've been told,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see the die.
You.
We're
I'll never
recording
hear
right
the
now.
end of this.
How do you tell the 6 from the 9?
Because it's got a
Oh,
little
it's a D10.
mark under it. You see that?
Yeah,
Oh,
6.
okay.
Okay, so I've had to think, should
Got a
I
mark on top of
change
it.
to another number now that we've had 555?
Adrian.
And I mean, I spent hours thinking about it.
Adrian has said 666. Rob is
I think it's
444.
going to be 555. I'm
All right.
going to stay with 5 because what's it? You know,
You might as
Richard,
well.
Are you sure? If you're in Australia,
Yeah.
don't you have the line on top of the number?
Yeah, I'll
that
try
indicates-
that. No, try it upside down. Is that what?
everybody put your guess for the first roll in the chat.
I put all 3, 876.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Okay, here comes the first one. It's a 10-sided die. It's yellow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. I'll try to do it so you can at least see it a bit. First number is 3.
Oh,
that was the
everything
number of-
comes in threes.
Nobody
That's the
got
number
it.
that I chose. I chose 3 numbers.
You
So
chose.
Adrian
Okay,
does.
very good. Okay. Second number coming up.
3.14.
Second number coming up.
3.14
Here it
Pi
comes.
Day.
And you people at home, you can use your psychic prediction power to guess what comes up. Here it comes. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Oh, Susan Gerbeck. It's a 5.
Okay, there you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. We're warming up here,
We're
folks.
warming up.
Come
We've
on,
got a
come on.
3.
Let's another 5. Come on.
A 5.
Mama needs new shoes.
The last number coming up. Mama needs new shoes. Okay, here it comes.
Baby needs new shoes.
Baby needs a new pair of shoes.
And the lucky last number is 10, represented by a 0 on this dice.
Well, that's
Why isn't
number
it
5.
0?
That's 2
Represented
5s.
by 0.
No, it's 2 5s.
3,
I did
5,
amazing.
and 10.
Amazing. Amazing. I'm amazed each time we go. Thank you, Richard Saunders.
We can do a
Hello,
supplementary using
everybody
this
on
one.
Skeptic Zone.
All right, one last go. This is a
Richard's doing an
D6.
extra-
Okay, I'm going to guess a 5. The D6.
I'm just going to shake it in my hand and present it to the camera, and whatever number I present to the camera is the number. Here it goes. No.
Oh,
That
that
was
was
rigged.
sleight of hand. That was like spoon
That
bending
was
sleight
rigged.
of hand,
It
wasn't
was
it?
not rigged. It was a 1 in 6 chance, and it came up 5. I promise. Look, I just
you go.
see what I'm doing. I'm doing that.
I
then-
believe you.
I trust them somewhat, sort of,
I
kind
got to
of.
get my time machine, reset the timer.
Okay, great.
Thank you,
Great
everybody.
job. Thank you, Richard.